There's a specific kind of man you've probably encountered. Maybe you've worked with him. Maybe you've dated him. Maybe you are him. He's successful, often impressively so. He's competent. He handles things. He solves problems. He doesn't complain. He doesn't ask for help. He just gets it done. People describe him with words like reliable, independent, strong. They say he has his life together. They come to him for advice. They admire his ability to stay calm under pressure. But if you get close enough, if you're his partner, his best friend, if you're brave enough to ask the real questions, you'll notice something else. He doesn't really let you in, not all the way. There's a wall. Not an obvious wall, he's not cold or unkind, but there's a distance, a place inside him you can't quite reach. He struggles to talk about feelings, not because he's trying to be macho, but because he genuinely doesn't know what he's feeling half the time. It's like asking him to describe colors he's never seen. He's disconnected from himself, from others, from the full spectrum of human emotional experience. And he's been this way for so long, he thinks this is just who he is, just how men are. But it's not. This is what sons of emotionally distant parents become, emotionally unavailable men who are completely unaware they're emotionally unavailable. And here's what makes this so tragic. These men aren't choosing disconnection. They're not refusing intimacy out of selfishness or fear. They literally don't know how to do it because nobody ever taught them. Nobody ever showed them that emotions are safe, that vulnerability is strength, that needing connection doesn't make you weak. Instead, they learned the opposite. They learned that emotions are inconvenient, that needing people is dangerous, that the safest way to exist is to be self-sufficient, controlled, and emotionally blank. And now they're grown men living half lives, achieving without feeling the achievement, being loved without feeling lovable, going through the motions of connection while remaining fundamentally alone. Today, we're going to break down exactly what happens to sons of emotionally distant parents, why they become who they become, how the wound manifests, and most importantly, how to start healing it. Because if you are this man, you deserve to know you're not broken, you're adapted, and adaptation can be changed. The specific adaptation, emotional shutdown. Let's be precise about what we're describing. This isn't about being introverted. This isn't about being stoic by choice. This isn't about preferring logic over emotion. This is about a specific developmental adaptation that happens when a boy grows up with parents who are emotionally unavailable, emotionally distant, or emotionally neglectful. Here's what that adaptation looks like: the emotion disconnection. Most people have access to a range of emotions. They feel sad and they know they're sad. They feel anxious and they can identify it. They feel joy and they can experience it. Men raised by emotionally distant parents often can't do this. They feel something uncomfortable in their body, tightness in the chest, tension in the shoulders, a knot in the stomach, but they can't name it. They don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the framework. Ask them, "How do you feel?" And they'll say, "Fine," or "I don't know," because those are the only true answers they have access to. They're not lying. They're not withholding. They genuinely don't know. The intimacy barrier. They want connection. They're in relationships. They care about people, but there's a ceiling on how close they can get. They'll go to a certain depth, they'll share facts about their life, they'll be present physically, they'll do acts of service, but they can't go deeper. They can't be emotionally naked. They can't let someone truly see their internal world because they don't really see it themselves. Their partners feel lonely even when they're together, like they're in a relationship with a hologram, there but not really there. The self-sufficiency armor. They handle everything themselves. They don't ask for help. They don't lean on others. They pride themselves on being low maintenance, on not being a burden, on having their shit together. This looks like strength. It feels like maturity, but it's actually a trauma response. They learned as boys that needing people leads to disappointment, that emotional bids go unanswered, that vulnerability is met with discomfort or dismissal. So they stopped reaching, they stopped needing, they became fortresses. The achievement substitution. Because they can't connect emotionally, they connect through doing, through achievement, through being useful, impressive, successful. They think, if I can't make people love me for who I am, I'll make them respect me for what I do. So they work, they build, they achieve, and it feels empty because you can't fill an emotional void with achievements, but they don't know what else to try. This is the adaptation. This is what sons of emotionally distant parents become, not intentionally, not consciously, just inevitably. How the wound gets installed. Let's trace this back to the origin, because understanding how this happened removes shame and creates space for healing. The father who wasn't there, even when he was there. Your father might have been physically present. He went to work, he came home, he paid the bills. Maybe he even came to some of your games. But emotionally, he was absent. He didn't ask how you were feeling. He didn't share his own feelings. He didn't hug you after a certain age. He didn't tell you he was proud of you, or if he did, it was rare and transactional. You learned men don't do emotions. Men are stoic. Men are practical. Men focus on what needs to be done, not how anyone feels about it. You watched him live this way, and you absorbed it, not because he taught you explicitly, but because children learn by modeling. You became what you saw. The mother who needed you to be easy. Maybe your mother was overwhelmed. Maybe she was depressed. Maybe she was focused on your father's needs or her own survival or your siblings. Whatever the reason, she couldn't handle your emotional needs. When you were upset, she'd get uncomfortable. She'd try to fix it quickly or minimize it or distract you from it. You learned, my emotions are inconvenient. They stress people out. The kind thing to do is not have them, or at least not show them. So you stopped showing them, and eventually you stopped having access to them. The boys don't cry programming. This one's cultural, but reinforced by your family. Every time you cried as a boy, someone, maybe your dad, maybe your mom, maybe your grandfather, said some version of, stop crying, be tough, man up, boys don't cry. You learned emotions are weakness, vulnerability is shameful. Real men don't feel things, or if they do, they certainly don't show it. This got hardwired into your nervous system. Emotions became dangerous, something to suppress, control, eliminate. The lack of emotional education. Nobody taught you about emotions. Nobody helped you name what you were feeling. Nobody said, you look sad, what's going on? Or, I can see you're frustrated, that makes sense given what happened. Emotions were just these chaotic internal storms that you had to weather alone. You never learned that they could be understood, processed, shared. You never learned that they're information, not threats. So you developed a relationship with emotions where you either ignore them completely or they overwhelm you. There's no middle ground, no skills, no framework. The repeated experience of emotional bids being ignored. This one's the most damaging one. Over and over as a child, you reached for emotional connection and got nothing back. You were scared and nobody comforted you. You were excited and nobody matched your energy. You were sad and nobody sat with you in it. You needed reassurance and nobody offered it. Your brain learned reaching for emotional connection doesn't work. People don't respond. I'm on my own. And so you stopped reaching. You turned inward. You built walls, not to be difficult, but to survive the loneliness of repeatedly reaching for connection that never came. How this manifests in your adult life. Now let's get specific about how this plays out now, because recognition is the first step toward change. You're a fixer, not a feeler. Someone you care about is upset. They're telling you about a problem, and your immediate response is, here's what you should do, here's how to fix it. You're trying to help, but they don't want solutions. They want to be heard. They want you to sit with them in the feeling, to just be present with their emotion. And you can't, because nobody ever did that for you, so you don't know how. You only know how to problem solve, because that's the one way you learn to show care. Your relationships feel surface level. You've been with your partner for years. You do life together, but there's something missing. They complain that you don't open up, that they don't really know you, that you're always fine. And you genuinely don't understand what they want. You're there, you're faithful, you provide. What more is there? What's missing is emotional intimacy. They want access to your internal world, but you don't give access to a place you don't go yourself. You have two emotional states, fine and angry. Most of the time, you're fine, neutral, steady. Nothing bothers you. You're the calm one, until suddenly you're not. Something tips you over and you're furious, or you're snapping at people, or you're withdrawing completely. You don't have access to the middle range of emotions, sadness, disappointment, frustration, anxiety, so everything gets compressed into either fine or overwhelmed and angry. This makes you confusing to be around. People don't see it coming. You don't see it coming because you can't track your emotional states as they're building. You're uncomfortable with other people's emotions. Someone starts crying around you and you freeze. You don't know what to do. Maybe you offer awkward comfort. Maybe you try to make them stop. Maybe you leave the room. It's not that you don't care, it's that you don't have the tools. Nobody modeled emotional attunement for you, so you're as lost in someone else's emotional experience as you are in your own. You measure your worth by your achievements. You think, if I'm successful enough, accomplished enough, useful enough, then I matter, then I'm worthy, then I'm valuable. Because you never learned that your worth is inherent. You learned that worth is earned. And since you can't earn it through emotional connection because you don't know how to do that, you earn it through achievement. So you keep achieving and it keeps feeling empty because you're trying to fill an emotional need with accomplishments and it doesn't work. You're lonely, but you don't know you're lonely. You have people in your life, you're not isolated, you're in a relationship, you have friends, you have family, but you feel disconnected, separate, like you're watching life through a window instead of participating in it. You don't identify it as loneliness because you think loneliness means being physically alone. You don't realize you can be surrounded by people and still be profoundly lonely because you're not emotionally connected to anyone, including yourself. Feel that tension building in your chest as you read this? That's your body recognizing itself. The specific cost of this adaptation. We need to talk about what this pattern is actually costing you, because until you see the price, there's no motivation to change. It's costing you intimacy. You're in relationships, but you're not truly connected. Your partner loves you, but they feel alone with you. They don't feel truly known by you because you don't know yourself. Intimacy requires vulnerability, requires letting someone see your internal world, requires emotional presence, and you can't do that when you don't have access to your own emotions. So you're going through the motions of connection without ever experiencing the depth that makes connection meaningful. It's costing you your health. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They get stored in your body. They become chronic tension, headaches, digestive issues, high blood pressure, sleep problems. Your body is trying to process what your mind won't acknowledge, and it's breaking down under the strain. Research on emotional suppression shows it's linked to increased inflammation, cardiovascular disease, and compromised immune function. This isn't metaphorical. This is measurable physiological damage. It's costing you self-awareness. You don't really know yourself. You don't know what you want, what you need, what makes you come alive, what you're actually feeling at any given moment. You're operating on autopilot, doing what you think you should do, being who you think you should be, but you've lost touch with who you actually are underneath all the adaptation. And that disconnection from self makes it impossible to make choices that actually satisfy you. So you keep achieving, keep doing, keep going, and none of it feels right because you're not connected to your authentic self. It's costing you joy. You can't selectively numb emotions. When you shut down access to pain, sadness, fear, and anger, you also shut down access to joy, excitement, love, and peace. So even when good things happen, you don't feel them. You can't. You've built walls that keep everything out, not just the bad stuff. You're living a muted existence, going through the motions, checking boxes, but not actually feeling the richness of being alive. It's costing you the next generation. If you have kids, you're passing this pattern on, not because you want to, but because you're modeling what you learned. Your sons are watching you suppress emotions. They're learning that's what men do. Your daughters are learning that men aren't emotionally available and adjusting their expectations accordingly. The cycle continues, unless you break it.
Stop for just a second. Let me ask you something. How many times this week have you answered, "I'm fine," when you weren't actually fine? How many times have you solved someone's problem when they just needed you to listen? How many times have you felt something uncomfortable in your body and just pushed through it without acknowledging it? If this is speaking to something you've never had words for, if you're finally seeing the pattern you've been living inside of, I want you to do something. Leave a comment with one word: present. Not because you feel emotionally present yet, but because that's what you're moving toward. That's what was taken from you, the ability to be present with your own emotions and with others. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This channel is dedicated to helping people see and heal from family wounds. You're not alone in this disconnection. Hit that like button too. It helps this reach other men who are living the same way, unaware that the strength they've been praised for is actually a wound that's costing them everything. Now let's talk about why this is so hard to change. Why you can't just get in touch with your feelings. People who don't understand this wound will give you simplistic advice. Just be more vulnerable. Just express your feelings. Just open up more. And you try and it doesn't work. Here's why. You don't have the neural pathways. Emotional awareness isn't just a choice, it's a skill that gets developed through practice, and you didn't get that practice. The neural pathways that connect body sensations to emotional awareness, that link internal states to language, that allow you to identify and name what you're feeling, those weren't developed in childhood. You can't just decide to use pathways that were never built. You have to build them now, and that takes time, practice, and specific kinds of work. Your nervous system is calibrated for disconnection. Your nervous system learned that emotional connection is dangerous, that vulnerability leads to pain, that the safest state is numb. So when you try to access emotions, your nervous system activates threat responses. You feel anxious, you want to escape, you shut down, not because you're choosing to, but because your body is trying to protect you. You don't have the language. When people ask, "How do you feel?" you genuinely don't know how to answer beyond good or bad or fine. You don't have the vocabulary. You can't distinguish between anxiety and sadness, between disappointment and anger, between loneliness and fear. Language creates categories. Categories create awareness. Without the language, you can't even see what's there. The vulnerability feels like weakness. You've been conditioned your entire life to believe that showing emotion is weak, that needing people is pathetic, that real men are self-sufficient. So when you try to be vulnerable, every cell in your body screams that you're doing something wrong, that you're being weak, that people will lose respect for you. That's not truth, that's programming, but it feels like truth when it's all you've known. You don't trust that anyone can handle it. Even if you could access your emotions, even if you had the language, you don't believe anyone actually wants to hear it. Because when you tried as a child, people didn't respond. They dismissed you or got uncomfortable or told you to toughen up. So why would it be different now? Why would adults suddenly be able to handle what your parents couldn't? This is the bind, and it keeps you trapped.
What actually works? The real path forward. So if simplistic advice doesn't work, what does? Here's the actual path to reconnecting with your emotional self. Step 1, body awareness before emotional awareness. You can't start with, what am I feeling? Because you don't know. You have to start with, what am I sensing in my body? Practice checking in with physical sensations, tension in your jaw, tightness in your chest, knot in your stomach, heaviness in your limbs. You're not trying to name emotions yet, you're just noticing body states. This is the foundation because emotions live in the body first, mind second. Step 2, expand your emotional vocabulary. You need more words than fine, good, bad, angry. Get a feelings wheel, study it, learn the nuances. Frustrated is different from disappointed. Anxious is different from overwhelmed. Lonely is different from sad. Practice using these words. Even if you're not sure you're using them right, you're building the neural pathways that connect internal states to language. Step 3, find men who are doing this work. You can't do this in isolation. You need to see other men modeling emotional awareness. You need permission to be vulnerable from people who've done it themselves. This might be a men's group, a therapist who specializes in men's issues, male friends who are further along in their own healing. You need to witness that vulnerability doesn't make you weak, that other men can access emotions and still be strong, that this is possible. Step 4, practice micro-vulnerabilities. You don't have to pour your heart out immediately. Start tiny. Instead of I'm fine, try I'm tired or I'm stressed about this deadline. Instead of staying silent, try that comment bothered me. Instead of fixing, try that sounds hard. These are micro-vulnerabilities, small steps toward emotional honesty. They build tolerance for being seen in your humanity. Step 5, therapy with someone who gets it. Not just any therapist. You need someone who understands the specific wound of emotional neglect in boys. Someone who won't push you faster than you can go. Someone who can create safety while you learn skills you should have learned at 5. This isn't about talking about your feelings for an hour. This is about learning, actually learning, how to access, understand, and express your internal world. Step 6, patience with your partner. If you're in a relationship, your partner has probably been frustrated by your emotional unavailability for years. They might be resentful. They might have given up asking you to open up. You need to communicate. I'm starting to understand I wasn't taught how to do this. I'm learning now. I need patience, and I need you to tell me specifically what you need because I genuinely don't know. This won't fix everything immediately, but it shifts the dynamic from you're refusing to connect to you're learning how to connect. That's a massive difference. Step 7, grieving what you didn't get. Part of this work is grief. You have to grieve the childhood where nobody taught you about emotions, where nobody modeled healthy emotional expression, where you learned that feelings were dangerous. That grief might come out as anger or sadness or numbness. Let it come however it comes. Don't judge it, just feel it. Because the grief is the path through. On the other side of grieving what you didn't get, there's space to build what you need now. What changes when you heal? Let me paint you a picture of what's possible when you start reconnecting with your emotional self. You can actually be present.
You're with someone you love and you're actually there. Not thinking about the next thing, not solving problems in your head, just present, feeling the connection, experiencing the moment. This sounds simple. For you, it's revolutionary because for the first time, you're not just going through the motions, you're actually experiencing your own life. Your relationships deepen. Your partner feels it when you start opening up, when you start sharing what's actually going on inside you, when you stop being the impenetrable fortress. They don't need you to be perfect, they need you to be real. And when you start being real, intimacy becomes possible in ways it never was before. You have more than two emotional settings. You develop access to the full range of human emotion. You can feel disappointed without it becoming rage. You can feel sad without shutting down completely. You can feel anxious and still function. This makes you more stable, more predictable, easier to be around because people aren't constantly wondering which version of you they're going to get. You stop needing achievement to feel worthy. You still achieve things, maybe even more effectively because you're not driven by wound-based impulsion, but achievement stops being the only way you know your worth. You start to develop an internal sense of value that isn't contingent on external success. You start to believe you matter because you exist, not because of what you accomplish. You can receive care. This is huge. You let people help you. You let people be there for you. You stop insisting you're fine when you're not. You discover that needing people doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, and that letting people care for you actually strengthens relationships instead of burdening them. You model something different for your kids. If you have children, they watch you access emotions. They watch you be vulnerable. They watch you stay strong while also being human. Your sons learn that men can feel. Your daughters learn that emotional connection is possible with men. You break the cycle that broke you. The truth of emotional distance. Here's what I need you to understand. The emotional distance you learned isn't who you are. It's what you had to become to survive an environment where emotions weren't safe. Your parents, especially your father, probably passed this pattern to you not because they didn't love you, but because it was passed to them. This wound has been traveling through generations of men who learned that feelings are weakness and self-sufficiency is strength. But you can be the one who stops it, who says, "This pattern ends with me," who does the uncomfortable work of learning to feel again. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's awkward. Yes, it goes against everything you were taught about what it means to be a man. But here's what's on the other side. Connection. Real connection. The kind where people actually know you, where you actually know yourself, where life feels rich and full instead of muted and distant. The kind where you're not just functioning, you're actually living. You deserve that, not because you earned it, not because you achieved enough, but because you're human, and humans are wired for emotional connection. It's not optional, it's essential. The work is hard, but the cost of not doing it is harder. Living your whole life disconnected from yourself and others, that's the harder path. You just don't realize it because it's familiar. So start small, start today. Notice one thing you're feeling in your body. Name it, even if you're wrong. Share one small, vulnerable thing with one person. You don't have to transform overnight. You just have to start. The emotionally distant parents you raised, they did their best with what they had, but their best wasn't enough, and that's not your fault. What happens next, though, that's your choice. You can keep living the pattern, or you can start learning a different way. Your sons are watching, your partner is waiting, your own heart is hoping. It's time. If this spoke to you, if you recognized yourself in this pattern, Drop that word one more time, present. Let it be your commitment, your intention, your declaration that you're done living half a life. Share this with another man who needs to hear it, who's been praised for being strong when really he's just disconnected, who deserves to know there's another way. Subscribe to this channel. We're creating a space where people can heal from the wounds that nobody talks about. You belong here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to look at this. Thank you for considering that maybe the strength you've been showing is actually armor you don't need anymore. You are worthy of connection, not achievement-based connection, real connection, the kind where you get to be fully human. Now go practice being present, one moment at a time.